What does the Raiders starting quarterback Gardner Minshew bring to the table? Hear from one of his teammates and others exactly what to expect. That plus a whole lot more on Tuesday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for August 20th, 2024.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. Make sure you subscribe and follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast to get the latest edition of the show as soon as it becomes available. And as always, if you're checking us out on YouTube, you know we appreciate that. The show continues to grow each and every day, and that's because of your support and because of my man Ari, who does a great job each and every day making sure we're on YouTube, we're looking good, we're sounding good, we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. We shout him out. We appreciate him. He's on Twitter at Ari Producers. You can hit him up. You can hit me up as well at your boy Q254. And we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line at 707-654-4693. You want to be a part of the show, you can hit us up that way. And please believe, since the Raiders have announced that Gardner Minshew is the starting quarterback for the season so far for 2024, obviously that's subject to change, but right now he is the starting quarterback. You can imagine how much feedback we've received. So we'll try to get as much calls and texts in on the show today. Coming up in segment number 3. Now we've got so many texts and so many calls that I'll definitely not be able to get to every one of them. So please don't take it personal. It's just one of those scenarios. I can't squeeze every one of them in. As a matter of fact, I got a text message that was 26 text messages long. So as you can imagine, I'm definitely not going to get that one in either, but there's a ton of feedback. We'll get as much in as possible. I promise. That'll come up in segment number 3. Segment number 2, it'll be all things Gardner Minshew, what he brings to the table. Multiple people talking about what AP was looking for in a starting quarterback, what I thought that meant when I heard it from Jason Horowitz, the voice of the Silver and Black, what one of his teammates says that he brings to the table, and more. That's all coming up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Here in segment number 1, just news and notes of the day, as I always do. We'll jump into it after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is FanDuel. And now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. All you got to do is visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started today. I'll tell you more about them later on in the show, but the Raiders are preparing for preseason game number 3. It's coming up on Friday versus the 49ers. That's always a fun game. We know that there won't be any starters that will be playing, but it's the 49ers coming to town. It's the Raiders. It's Alumni Day, so that'll be a lot of fun. But, again, we already know that there won't be any starters that'll be out there. But the Raiders have released their updated depth chart in preparation for Friday's game. And then, of course, when the Raiders get ready for cut downs and when the 53-man roster comes out, then they'll give you an official updated depth chart, and so that'll be what they prepare for and prepare with as it comes up for September 8th, that first game of the season against the Chargers at SoFi Stadium. So real quick, we'll go through this updated depth chart for week 3 of the preseason. Starting wide receivers, Davante Adams and Jacoby Myers. Don't expect to see either one of those guys. On the 2 deep, you got Christian Wilkerson behind Davante Adams. You got Trey Tucker behind Jacoby Myers, and even Tulu Griffin kind of listed right behind him as well. You got DJ Turner in the 3 spot behind Jacoby Myers, and Terrell Bynum is listed side by side with him. I think you might see a little bit of Trey Tucker, and you'll probably see some DJ Turner coming up on Friday. Christian Wilkerson for sure, but no Davante Adams. The offensive line from left tackle on to right tackle. Colton Miller at the left tackle spot. The left guard is Cody Whitehair. Center is Andre James. Dylan Parham's the right guard. Thayer Munford still listed as the starting right tackle. Behind Colton Miller at the left tackle in the 2 deep, Andrews Pete. At the left guard in the 2 deep, JPJ, Jackson Powers Johnson. You got Ben Brown behind Andre James at the center. And then you've got Jordan Meredith at the right guard spot behind Dylan Parham, with DJ Glaze at the right tackle spot as part of the 2 deep behind Thayer Munford. So I'm interested to see what offensive line is trotted out there on Friday. I'd like to see JPJ get some burn, right? We know he's been activated from the PUP list. Colton Miller still has not. That's something to pay attention to. It is the 20th. The Raiders only have till the 27th to get him activated off the PUP list. If they don't activate him by the 27th, then he's going to miss automatically the first 4 games of the season. I don't think that the Raiders are in position to have him miss the first 4 games of the season, but that's just me. So that's something to pay attention to. You want to talk about a storyline, definitely something to pay attention to. Plus, you want to get Colton Miller and JPJ out there with the starting offensive line so they can start to gel and come together. So that, like I said, is something to pay attention to for sure. Now, I will say this. Last time they had an open practice at Allegiant Stadium where it was open to the fans for free to get in and free parking, they announced that JPJ was activated off the PUP list. So maybe with that happening today at Allegiant Stadium this evening, maybe Antonio Pierce will make that announcement as well. That'd be fantastic. But the sooner rather than later for Colton to get activated from the PUP list, the better. Because, again, if he is still on the PUP list by the 27th, he's automatically missing the first 4 games of the season. At the tight end spot, first starting tight ends, Michael Mayer and Brock Bowers. No shock there. Harrison Bryant is behind Mayer. Zach Gentry behind Bowers on the 2 deep. And then, of course, the quarterback is Gardner Minshew. There is no more or. It's Gardner Minshew with the 2 deep, Aiden O'Connell, Carter Bradley in the 3 hole with Nate Peterman there in the 4th spot. And then the running backs, Zamir White, Alexander Madison, the 2 deep, Amir Abdullah and Britton Brown are listed as a 3, and Dylan Lobby and Sincere McCormick are listed at the 4 spot. So that's the offense right there on the updated depth chart as the Raiders prepare for Friday's game versus the 49ers. As far as defense goes, the edge rushers, Max Crosby and Malcolm Kuntz, with Tyree Wilson being behind Crosby and Janarius Robinson being behind Malcolm Kuntz. On the defensive tackles, John Jenkins and Christian Wilkins, Byron Young and Adam Butler are the 2 deep behind Jenkins and also Wilkins. Linebackers, you got Devon Diablo, Robert Spillane. In the 2 deep, you got Luke Masterson, Tommy Eichenberg, and then Amari Burney is the 3 spot behind Robert Spillane. I bring him up because I don't know if Tommy Eichenberg is going to be out there on Friday, as AP has said that he's dealing with a lower leg injury. Cornerbacks, starting cornerbacks, Nate Hobbs, Jacorian Bennett, and Jack Jones. Behind Hobbs, you've got MJ Devonshire, DCam Richardson's behind Jacorian Bennett, and Brandon Faison is behind Jack Jones. Starting safeties, Trayvon Merrick and Marcus Epps, with Isaiah Palamau and Chris Smith as a 2 deep. Palamau's behind Merrick and Chris Smith behind Marcus Epps. Of course, you know the specialists, A.J. Cole, Daniel Carlson, Bowman Meyer, Amir Abdullah, Trey Tucker, DJ Turner, Amir Abdullah as far as kick returners, punt returners. So the specialists all remain the same. But that's the Raiders' updated depth chart as they prepare for the 3rd week of the preseason this Friday against the 49ers at Allegiant Stadium. I mentioned that the Raiders need to activate Colton Miller by the 27th. That's something that we'll definitely be paying attention to. And I also mentioned that the Raiders will hold another open practice at Allegiant Stadium. It's free to get in, free to park. You do have to have tickets. They went through a system already. So last time they had over 45,000 fans in attendance. I'm expecting another big showing again. I'm not going to be able to be there. I wish I could, but I can't be there at any of the night practices because of my night show that I do on ESPN Game Night, so I won't be able to do that. But hopefully Antonio Pierce, before the practice starts, announces that Colton Miller is off that PUP list like he did with JPJ a week ago. And also, my final nugget that I have for you for segment number 1 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast, I'm going to continue to update you on what's going on in Williamsport. That's the spot of the Little League World Series. The Henderson team, Paseo Verde, defeated Hawaii on Monday 3-2. They remain undefeated. Adam Johnson is the manager. He's the Raiders' assistant equipment manager. That's really cool to be able to have a rooting interest in the Little League World Series. I always like to watch that anyway, just because I love baseball, and Little League baseball is fantastic. But to know that there's a Raiders tie, there's a local tie, and to see those guys go out there and play, and make no mistake about it, that Hawaii team is tough. They are no slouch, right? And so for Henderson to be able to win that game, I think Hawaii had 9 hits on the day, and the Paseo Verde team only had 5, but they still found a way to win 3-2. So they march on. They remain undefeated, and now Hawaii's got to play as they have 1 loss under their belt. They've got to play again today when Henderson, the Paseo Verde team, is off today. So shout out to Adam Johnson, again, the Raiders' assistant equipment manager. Him and his team march on in Williamsport, the spot of the Little League World Series. Coming up in segment number 2, all things Gardner Minshew. You'll hear what Antonio Pierce was looking for in a starting quarterback, my thoughts on that, Raiders running back Alexander Madison, what his thoughts are on what Gardner Minshew brings to the table, and even Yogi Roth, who's part of the Big Ten Network Y Option podcast, who's covered Gardner Minshew for a very long time, his thoughts as well. So all things Gardner Minshew comes up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about the title sponsor of this show, which is FanDuel. And you've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. Well, they've got something a little different for you right now. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. So if you're a Raider fan from out of town and you don't get the games locally, that's how you can do it. You can do it by, going to FanDuel, placing a $5 bet and getting that 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV, and maybe you'll end up liking it. And you say, you know what, this is for me. I want to hold on to it. That's how it happens. But go ahead and get that free 3-week trial of NFL Sunday Ticket. YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel that at any time. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. That is FanDuel. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to deep dive into all things Gardner Minshew, what he brings to the table, what Antonio Pierce was looking for in a starting quarterback, and more. So we're going to go ahead and jump into this and go back to even the pregame show on Saturday when the Raiders were taking on the Dallas Cowboys. Myself and Eddie Pascal were hosting the pregame show. I hosted the postgame show solo bolo, but for the pregame show, the voice of the Silver and Black, Jason Horowitz, came down to the stage right there on the Coors Light Landing in Allegiant where the torch is, and was sitting there talking to us about what his expectations were from the game, the quarterback competition, and more. And I found this to be interesting what Jason said that AP was looking for in his starting quarterback as he was watching the game, what he'd be looking for. Here's Jason Horowitz on what AP was looking for.
Antonio Pierce said to us yesterday in our meeting, he said, because I said, look, you're getting all these reps, practices, games. How should we describe to Raider Nation what you are looking for your starting quarterback? As they're watching, how are you making this decision? And his answer to us was, we are looking for the quarterback who is going to get us off to a fast start. Now, he meant that in a game.
Yeah.
He also means that for the season because he talked about the defenses that the Raiders are going to see the first 4 weeks. Bosa and Khalil Mack with Derwin James, and you're going to see the Ravens with led the NFL at 60 sacks, and then the Cleveland Browns and NFL Defensive Player of the Year Myles Garrett and all the guys they have on that side of the ball. So who is going to be the quarterback who is going to get him off to a fast start? And, you know, whatever that means to them, that's who's going to be the starting quarterback week 1 for the Raiders.
So I kind of described this on Monday's show that's what Jason Horowitz had said, that he was looking for a quarterback that can get this team off to a hot start, not only in games, but also for the regular season. And AP talks about the quarters of the season. And that's something that, you know, I really started hearing when John Gruden was the Raiders quarterback the first time. Right, when he was the, you know, John Gruden 1.0, he was always talking about the season you broke it up into quarters, right? And that's when there was only 16 games. So it was, you know, every 4 games was another quarter. And that's how Antonio Pierce looks at it. Obviously, there's 17 games, so there's one more. But when I heard what Jason said while we were doing the pregame show, myself and Eddie Pascal, I immediately thought, well, that means that Gardner Minshew is probably the leader in the clubhouse because it sounds like a veteran to me. But don't take my word for it. I actually want you to hear what I had to say when we interviewed JT the Brick, Eric Allen, and Lincoln Kennedy. They were in the booth getting ready for the radio call. I was addressing this question to EA, and I talked about what Jason Horowitz had to say and what that meant to me as far as a starting quarterback. Here it is.
One thing, EA, that Jason Horowitz told us and shared with us when he was down here was that AP said whoever can get this team off to a fast start, not only in the game, but into the season, is what they'll be looking for. And so, to me, just from my point of view, it almost sounds like that's a veteran, a guy who's been there, done that multiple years like Gardner Minshew has.
Yeah, that could lean that way, but more importantly, and I'll go to JT, more importantly, I think it's the guy, when you get in that huddle, the players around him feel that energy, feel that vibe.
So there you hear me right there say that to me it sounds like that's a veteran. That's a veteran, not a guy that's only in his second year trying to find his way in the National Football League. It sounded like AP doesn't want, you know, a guy to come in off the bench and be a spark, which we all know Gardner Minshew could be. It sounds like he wants that spark at the beginning of the season. And if you look at the schedule, the first 4 games aren't going to be easy, right? He's on the road for the first 2, both in L.A. against the Chargers and then in Baltimore against the Ravens. Return home, and you've got the Carolina Panthers, and then you got the Cleveland Browns. 3 out of 4 of those teams have really good edge rushers, have really good, defenses that can get to the quarterback and make life miserable. So, you know, it might not be the best situation for Aiden O'Connell to walk into. And so when I heard what Jason Horowitz had to say, it just kind of made me lean towards Gardner Minshew. Now, with that being said, I saw the game that he played on Saturday against the Cowboys and thought, well, if he was the leader in the clubhouse, he probably isn't anymore. So that kind of goes back to the conversation that AP said, where he said it's more than just the game on Saturday, just the game against the Minnesota Vikings. It's everything going back to, you know, OTAs, mandatory minicamp, what we saw in training camp, what we've seen in the preseason games, the meetings, stuff that we don't get to see. It's everything that goes into it, how he is in the locker room with the players. Like, there's so much that goes into it. Well, I mentioned Raiders running back Alexander Madison. He was a last-second guest on my radio show on Monday, he has this, this event. He's a big-time guy when it comes to charity. It's really awesome. His foundation gives back to the community no matter where he's playing. And so he's doing a Raid the Rack type thing for local kids here in the Las Vegas area. So his people reached out to me, about mid-show on Monday and was like, hey, can Alexander come on and talk about it? So I was like, absolutely. So we put him on around 3:30 Pacific time. You can go check out the whole interview at lvsportsnetwork.com. It's right there. Again, it was around 3:30 on Monday that interview took place. But I had to ask him what his thoughts on Gardner Minshew being named the starting quarterback, what he brings to the table. Here's what Alexander Madison, Raiders running back, had to say.
He has I don't know the right words to say, but he has like a little spark to him that just offers a presence that's just one of those things. When you're playing ball, you just want to be able to go out there and ball. And he's one of those guys that stuff doesn't go the right way, he's going to ball regardless. And so to see that, I'm super proud of him, super happy for him, and excited as we get ready to go into this to continue to build that chemistry. But it's one of those things. I was having a conversation with him the other day. He's one of those guys that just has a little bit of a window of openness to him where, it's easy to build that chemistry with. It's easy to kind of see his perspective with things. So, even in the game, some off-schedule throws, some off-schedule eye glances that we, kind of stare each other in the eye a little bit. Those type of things are there. And so I'm just excited for him to go out there, be himself, and lead this team.
So you could tell by just the way that Alexander Madison was describing Gardner Minshew, what he could bring to the table and what those guys in the locker room are looking at and what they're seeing. And that's their leader. That's the guy that's got to take them out there and prepare them for a game each and every week and get them off to a hot start that AP is looking for. It's no longer warm and fuzzy feelings anymore. Now it's about winning games. Right? It's just about just win, baby. It's not about, trying to bring the culture back, bring the Raiders way back. Like, all that is great, but it's all about winning at the end of the day. So I was blessed to have another great guest on my radio show on Monday, and that's Yogi Roth. He's from the Big Ten Network. He also has a podcast out on Substack called The Y Option. He's author of The 5-Star Quarterback, and he knows Gardner Minshew really well. So on Sunday, Tom Pelissero from the NFL Network tweeted out, the Raiders are naming Gardner Minshew their starting quarterback. Coach Antonio Pierce just informed the quarterbacks of his decision after a camp battle between Minshew and Aiden O'Connell. Minshew Mania continues in Las Vegas, which opens September 8th versus the Chargers. So then the tweet from Yogi was a quote tweet on that one. He said, bet on himself, great lesson for all, go Cougs, and then at Washington State Cougar football. So when he was on my show on Monday, I led off with, hey, before we get into college football, what were your thoughts? I saw your tweet that you were talking about Gardner Minshew. What were your thoughts on Gardner Minshew? What does he bring to the table as as the quarterback for the Silver and Black? Here's what Yogi Roth had to say.
I'm not surprised for a second. I mean, I covered the daylights out of him when he went to Pullman under Mike Leach, and as the story goes, that you probably all know, he was on his way to Alabama to be the third-string quarterback and basically a spot to be a student assistant, a graduate assistant, and begin a coaching career. And in only the Mike Leach way, he said, well, you want to go sit on the bench? You want to go lead the nation in passing? And he came out and led the nation in passing, literally. And I can remember calling a game at home when they played Utah, and he threw a 73-yard touchdown to win the game down the right sideline. And I looked at my partner, Ted Robinson, and I said, this guy's got like a real shot, not just like a shot to be good in the air raid, but he's got all this stuff. And he's proven it. I think he's got, 30, 40 starts now. I think 41 starts in the NFL. Just thrilled for him. He's done it the hard way. I think it's inspiring to all the 2- and 3-star recruits out there that you might not be the man in high school, but just keep working at your craft, and when you get your shot, take it. And he's done nothing but that.
What is it about Gardner that just seems like he's got it? I don't know exactly what it is, but it's just something different about himself. He's unapologetically himself, and he just finds ways to get it done.
Yeah, that's a really fun question. Years ago, I made a film called The It Factory, and we went around the country and literally explored that, talking to NFL, college coaches, high school quarterbacks, coaches, you name it. And where we netted out was the following, is The It Factory, based on this film, our research, would be defined as when you walk into a room, people feel your presence, and you make them better. And that's what he did. I mean, if you go back to the time when he went to Pullman, they were coming off the loss of their quarterback. Tyler Herlinsky committed suicide. And Tyler Herlinsky was the quarterback, was going to be the face of that team. That's a tragic and brutal time for that community, for all of college football. And here came this guy in with jean shorts on, and just brought a joy to it, and it allowed that campus, allowed that university, allowed everybody dealing with loss to navigate it in a different way because of what sport can do. And he knew that responsibility. So I think it's easy to say, like, hey, he's a funny guy with a cool haircut and a mustache and jorts on all the time, but he's also extremely driven, tremendous work ethic, got a really great understanding of the game from the shoulders up, and knows what the it factor is in terms of making people around you better, whether that's through something, God forbid, like and that team went through in Pullman, or if it's going through a training camp for the Raiders. Like that has, since I've gotten to know him, and it's been awesome to watch it continue to really cut through the lines of what the NFL is. And sometimes the NFL can be about big names, big hype, etc. And he's been about performance.
So there's some more really good details as far as I'm concerned about what he's able to bring. And, it's kind of all levels of Gardner Minshew. And at the end of the day, he's a veteran. He's a guy that, has been there, done that for the Jaguars, for the Eagles, for the Colts, and now for the Silver and Black. He's never had an opportunity to be the starting quarterback to start the season. He's always been the guy that, just in case emergency, break glass to go to. That's what the Colts did last year when Anthony Richardson went down after 4 games. Like, all right, Gardner, come in there and do what you do. And the good thing is that, he was able to adapt to the Shane Steichen system. Now he's got Luke Getsy, the offensive coordinator. Now he doesn't have to go back and forth between, all right, I got to design this offense for Gardner, and then I got to design this offense for Aiden, because these guys, even though their numbers may look similar, they're 2 different style quarterbacks. Now Luke Getsy, the offensive coordinator, can absolutely just design this offense around him and really kind of showcase what his skill set is. And the good thing about it is, with those first 4 games and those guys that are trying to get after the quarterback, Minshew does have the ability to move around in the pocket. And I've said it from day one that I think that was a factor that went into this. And the only thing I'll caution, I've said it before, I've said it 100 times, I'll say it 100 more times, he can't bail out of the pocket early. He can't just bail out because all of a sudden he feels like there may be some pressure there that's not there. If the pocket is there and clean, like it pretty much was for the majority of the night on Saturday night versus the Cowboys, he's got to be able to stand in that pocket and deliver the ball down the field. There was a couple times that he had a chance to have a big play that he either gave up on it a little bit too quickly. So he's got to be able to work that self out and be better than he was on Saturday, because he just wasn't very good. 10 for 21 on the night's not good at all. Right? I mean, he's got to be a lot better than that. But now that he knows, all right, this is his team, right? It's not going to mean that it's his team for all 18 weeks and 17 games. He's got to go out there and perform. It's a production-based business. We know that. So he's got to go out there and perform. But he's going to be the guy tasked with jump-starting this Raiders offense from the jump. Not coming in, 5 weeks in, 6 weeks in, 7 weeks in, and trying to bring them back from the dead and try to run the table at the end and all of a sudden, sneak into the playoffs. They want to get off to a hot start, and especially with that schedule, the way it's set up, it's not going to be easy to do that, but that's going to be his task at hand. But it sounds like everyone from inside the organization, the players, and others that are on the outside looking in are all aboard with what Gardner Minshew could potentially bring to the table. Now that, that's all said and done, now he's just got to go out there and make it happen. But Raider Nation, it's time to get behind the quarterback, just like Raider Nation got behind Jimmy G for the most part when he was signed last year, even though I know I wasn't a fan of the signing. But once he was a Raiders quarterback, it's like, okay, this is what it is. You want this team to be successful. That means you want that quarterback to be successful. And that would go for any quarterback, right? I mean, again, I said it way back before training camp started that I expected Aiden O'Connell to get the job, but he just didn't go out there and take it. He didn't go out there and own it like he should. So here's Gardner Minshew with the opportunity of a lifetime that he's really never had. Now let's see how he adapts to being the day one starter for the Silver and Black. But I wanted to make sure to pass that sound along on Gardner Minshew, and especially with Jason Horowitz and what AP was looking for, just so it maybe makes a little bit more sense if you had any questions of what he was looking for. Your calls and texts are coming up next. 707-654-4693. It's coming up in segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts draft that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. We'll start things off with a call from Julian from Moraga. He's calling to talk about the quarterback competition and what he thinks about the ultimate decision to go with Gardner Minshew. Here he is, Julian from Moraga.
Hey, what's up, Q? Julian Alvarez giving you a call with Moraga. From Moraga, wanted to call about that Gardner Minshew in O'Connell debate. I was on Team O'Connell. I thought he had a way bigger upside. I thought he is pure pocket passer. He can make every throw. I really wanted him to start, but started to listen to some of the reasoning behind it. I forget where I heard it, but one reason was this also gives Minshew that fast start that AP wants to see from the team. I think Minshew is the guy. He got that swag. He has experience. He can go in and win games. He's proven that in the league. And if, I hope not, but if he does struggle or the team's not where it needs to be, Aiden O'Connell will then come in and have less pressure to actually see where he's at. So I'm going to do cup half full. I'm going to take it. Minshew can come in and win games. If everything goes well, Luke Getsy performs in terms of he's picking the right calls for scheming the right game plan, doing the right things to get the team in the right places. Great. Minshew has a good year. He doesn't. We're not looking good. You go Aiden O'Connell in there, see if you got a legit starter or if he's just going to be a perennial backup. So I'm excited. I'll be there week 3 home opener. So hopefully we'll see Gardner Minshew come into that game and win us that home opener. All right, thanks a lot. Take care. Bye.
Julian, thanks so much for the call. Appreciate you. And the biggest key for me was the fact that he wanted to get off to a quick start, and he being AP, right? And that's going to be what Gardner Minshew is going to have to do. He's going to be tasked with not providing that spark off the bench, which we all know he can do. We've seen him do it throughout the course of his career, but now being able to do it from day one, right? Just jump in immediately and provide that spark. And again, that quick start that AP is looking for. So we'll see if he can do it. I'm sure he's excited by it. I know that the team has his back on that. And, now they got to go out there and Luke Getsy's got to put him in the best position to succeed. But Julian, thanks so much for that call. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Raider DeReal. He said, "What's up, Q? It's Raider DeReal. Now that we know that the starters aren't playing the last preseason game, do you think that AP would pull the old switcheroo on us and name O'Connell quarterback 1 if he balls out this last late preseason game? Probably unlikely, but curious about your thoughts on it. Thank you guys for everything y'all do for Raider Nation. Just win, baby." That's from Raider DeReal. And no, I don't think that AP is going to do that. Right? I mean, I could see what you're saying, but I couldn't see that at all, right? I don't think that AP is a guy that's going to play any games. Like I even mentioned to Jason Horowitz, Vinny Bonsignore, I should say, during the pregame show on Saturday versus the Cowboys. It's like, he can decide who the quarterback's going to be, but he might not announce it. He might just keep it close to the vest, and just make the Chargers prepare for both guys. And Vinny's like, "Man, do they have a practice on this upcoming week?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Man, he ain't going to do that. AP, he's going to just go ahead and say who it is. He's not going to sit there and try to play no games, not mess around, not play mind tricks. He just, hey, look, this is our guy. You prepare for him, that's fine, but he's going to go out there and he's going to be ready for the game." So I don't think that AP would make any kind of switcheroo like you mentioned, but it is a funny thought. And, we'll see. We'll see how much of Aiden O'Connell we actually see. I'm expecting to see a lot of Nate Peterman and a lot of Carter Bradley. And I guess since Carter Bradley's listed 3rd on the depth chart, more Carter Bradley and then Nate Peterman, I'm expecting to see a lot of those guys on Friday against the 49ers. So, it wouldn't be shocking to not see O'Connell at all, or if we do see him, only maybe, a series or two. Not, necessarily going to see him out there a whole lot. But I don't know at this stage of the game. Maybe that's something that Antonio Pierce will be asked later on today when he meets with the media before the practice coming up on this evening at Allegiant Stadium. But thanks for your text. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a call from Rafa, the Raider. Real quick call. He's calling to talk about the Madden biopic that is coming out and has something he'd like to point out about it and someone he'd like to see involved in it. Here he is, Rafa, the Raider.
Hey, Q. It's Rafa the Raider from the San Gabriel Valley. I'm calling because I heard about Nicolas Cage getting casted to play John Madden in a movie about his life. And I couldn't help but think about the CBS Super Bowl commercial with Tony Wolf. And just wanted to say that, Raider Nation is behind him. We're rooting for him. And I hope he gets cast to play Hal Davis because he did a good job. Anyways, I'm optimistic about the season. Doesn't look good, but still, as a Raiders fan, there's always hope. Let's go.
Thanks so much, my man. I do appreciate you. And yeah, Tony Wolf was fantastic in that CBS Sports special. He was so good that I had to track him down and get him on my radio show to talk about how it all came together. That would be great to see if him play the role of Al Davis again. That was something that I talked to him about earlier, right after the Super Bowl, right after we saw that. Or it was during the playoffs. It wasn't the Super Bowl, but it was during the playoffs. I guess it was it Super Bowl? Maybe it was the Super Bowl. No, it wasn't. It was I don't remember when it was. Was it the Pro Bowl or was it the Super Bowl? I thought I watched that at the house, but then I watched the Super Bowl at the M Resort, so it had to be during the playoffs. Either way, it wasn't. No, maybe it was the Raider. I don't know when it was, but you know when it was. It was sometime in the 2023 season, whether it was the playoffs or the Super Bowl. You got me all confused here. But Tony Wolf was fantastic, so I'll have to reach out to him and see if he's going to play a role in this Madden piece that's coming out. And Nicolas Cage playing Madden. At first, I looked at it and I was like, I just don't see it. But Nicolas Cage is a hell of an actor. I don't think that he would set himself up for something where he's not going to pull off the job. So I'm sure he'll do a really good job. But I will reach out to Tony Wolf, one, and find out when that special was on CBS Sports, and two, see if he is going to have any kind of role, or see if he thinks he's going to have any kind of role in this Madden piece that's coming up. Thanks so much for that call. I appreciate you. Thanks for confusing me too. That's all I need, right? Up next, got a text from Stanton right here in Vegas. It says, "Hey Q, Stanton from Vegas here. I think the key word in AP's announcement is Minshew gives us the best chance in the first quarter of the season. I think we all agree O'Connell has more upside but needs a productive offensive line. I think the plan is to hold out Aiden until the line solidifies with Miller and JPJ. Until the line gets there, O'Connell's weakness outweighs his strengths. Then once the line can take care of him, he becomes QB1. Plus, he still needs to work in Getsy's system. I expect to see a healthy dose of him Friday. I predict O'Connell is QB1 by the bye, regardless how well Minshew does." That's from Stanton in Vegas, and that's a hell of a theory. Thanks for the text right there. I do appreciate you. And I mean, that kind of goes back to what I was talking about when it comes to Colton Miller having to be activated by the 27th. If he's not, he'll miss the first 4 weeks, which is, in Antonio Pierce's words, the first quarter of the season. So maybe Stanton is onto something. Maybe the plan is to get Minshew to be the guy for the first 4 weeks because he has the mobility. He has the ability to run around and stay out of harm's way. Maybe that is it. And then all of a sudden, once Colton Miller and JPJ and the whole offensive line is all put together, maybe it is turn the sticks over to Aiden O'Connell. I'd kind of be surprised if he pulls the plug that quickly, but if there's not good production, then maybe that does happen. So we'll see. The bye week is week 10, right? The Raiders will play their first 9 games, finishing up with the Cincinnati Bengals on November 3rd. And then that week, the matter of fact, it's the same week of the trade deadline. They're on their bye week 10. So you're predicting that O'Connell will be the starting quarterback by then. That very well could happen. We'll just have to wait and see. But thanks for the text. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a call from T. Doug in Cali. He's calling to talk about Minshew getting the starting quarterback position and wants to talk about the struggles on defense to stop the run. Here's T. Doug in Cali.
Hey, Q. This is T. Doug in California. Want to talk about, Minshew. I think it makes the most sense for right now. He has the playmaking ability that Aiden just doesn't have. He's not as consistent as Aiden, but, it's not about chucking the ball behind the line of scrimmage and getting the low passes. It's about the big plays. And all it takes is a few big plays to really score. You could have a mediocre game, but if you have just those few big plays that get you touchdowns, that makes all the difference in a game, and you just hope that the defense can cover up all the mishaps on the side. Going back at the run defense, I think, someone meant, I think it was Lowe saying, Patrick Graham just hasn't really had a good run defense through his career, except I think one season. So really just figuring out that season with the Giants when they were 10th in run defense, what they did that year. Because even last year, I remember their run defense wasn't really good. They were actually very poor last year as well. Even the last few games, it was just that they were opportunistic, and teams eventually want to throw the ball. But quite frankly, if teams are stuck with the run, I think we'd be really exposed. But teams want to be able to pass the ball. Even in the Vikings game, you saw that in the preseason, they were able to run every single time, and it was not until they decided to pass the ball that we got the ball back. But if I'm the OC, I would have ran the ball every single play until they stopped us. And that honestly is a saving grace, is because they decided not to run it. But it was that consistent the whole time. So if John Harbaugh decides to run the ball, he may not decide to pass at all until we stop him, because, like I said, it's hard to get away from it when you want to be a pass-happy team in the NFL these days. But hopefully they figure it out, Q. Thanks for taking my call. Have a good one.
T. Doug, thanks so much. I appreciate you. Minshew makes sense, right now. And he can make sense for the long haul if he's successful. AP says it all the time. It's a production-based business, so you're going to have to win games. And that's what AP is about, winning games. You can't mess around and say, well, it's a fun story, and Raider Nation's behind the head coach, and Raider Nation's fired up because he brought back the Raider way. Like, all that's great. I love to talk about that. I think that that's exciting. But if they're not winning games, none of that's going to matter. So he's going to have to do that. As far as the run defense, I don't think there's any excuse. I know that Patrick Graham hasn't had a great history when it comes to stopping the run, his defenses, but there's no excuse. They've got plenty of really good players along the defensive line. I mean, I read it off the depth chart earlier. Max Crosby, Christian Wilkins, John Jenkins, Malcolm Kuntz. All those dudes could combine to stop the run, right? Tyree Wilson, when he's in there, he can, get in there and stop the run. They all need to work on stopping the run. If you can't stop the run, these teams aren't going to drop back and throw the ball against you 30 times. They're going to stop. They're going to run, and make you stop that. And if you can't, guess what? They're going to run some more. So that's got to be cleaned up. I don't want to say that I'm too worried about it because it's 2 preseason games. But with that being said, the Chargers and the Ravens, the first 2 weeks of the season, are going to want to do what? Run the ball, and run the ball some more. So if they can't figure it out, it's going to be a long day at the office for the Silver and Black. Got time for one more. We'll take a text from PK in Oakland. Says, hey, Q, it's PK Raider here reporting out of Oakland, Cali, a.k.a. The Town. Big fan of the show. I think Minshew was the right choice for the nation. We're due for a mobile quarterback. I think he'll be able to stretch the field and make plays happen on the run that we weren't getting with O'Connell. The key for us to have a good season is going to be the chemistry between Minshew and Adams. Hopefully they get along on and off the field and make things happen. Keep doing what you do. I hope to see you in Vegas one day at a game. That's PK in Oakland, and that is going to be important. That relationship between Gardner Minshew and Devontae Adams, they're going to have to be on the same page, along with Brock Bowers, along with Michael Mayer, along with the rest of the weapons, Trey Tucker. Now, we've seen Gardner Minshew connect with him a couple times. We've also seen Gardner Minshew not be on the same page with Trey Tucker as well. So they got to make sure that they're on the same page. That deep ball that he hit Trey Tucker with in that game against the Cowboys, if he throws it in a better spot, it's probably a touchdown. Right, and they end up settling for a 3 on that drive. That's the difference. They got to be able to get on the same page, and he's got to be able to hit that ball right where Trey Tucker can keep on running, not to stop and allow the defender to get into the play. Now, it still was great that they came up with the big play, but it could have been even bigger, right? And then, we saw one where he threw a deep shot that I thought Trey Tucker had a chance to get to, and he either looked over the wrong shoulder or he didn't expect the ball to be where it was, so they weren't quite on the same page on that one either. But, yeah, they definitely need to make sure they do that, but him and Devontae getting on the same page, and Luke Getsy for that matter, and being able to design this offense now around Minshew is going to be a huge key for the Raiders and especially the first 4 games of the season to see if they can have the ultimate success and get off to the start that Antonio Pierce is looking for. But thanks so much for that text. I do appreciate you. Got a call from Colin in Vegas. We'll get to that tomorrow. We got plenty of other texts to get to as well. We'll have more news and notes, of course, have plenty of conversation. We'll see what happens in this practice going on later this evening. What it sounds like, Antonio Pierce is supposed to be meeting with the media as well. So anything that he has good to say, we'll definitely bring it to the show as well. Hopefully he says that Colton Miller is activated from the PUP list like he said JPJ a week ago, but that is not guaranteed. But what is guaranteed is we'll be back here tomorrow on the Locked On Raiders podcast, giving you everything that you need to know to get you ready, not only for the upcoming season, but Friday's preseason game against the 49ers. So until then, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.